So we're going to see if it's really worth it. We're going to have this discussion by Bill Snape. He's a fellow and practicing in residence at American University's Washington's College of Law and senior counsel for the Center of Biological Diversity. That is a long title, but thank you very much and welcome to the show. Is it worth it? Is it?
Is it worth all this effort to export oil from Churchill? No, it's a very bad idea. It's foolhardy. It's not good for the people, and it's certainly not good for polar bears.
I always wanted to ask, how do we measure whether something is worth it or not? The cost of the environmental cost, how do we calculate that? How should one who doesn't maybe know a lot of details about carbon tax and footprints, how would a normal person analyze if something is good or bad for the environment?
Well, there's all sorts of cost-benefit analyses that experts do, and you can crunch numbers and come up with figures. And I think a cost-benefit analysis here would show that this is a bad idea. But how do you value human life? How do you value the life of a polar bear? How do you value the extinction of a whole species? Those are numbers that don't exist.
If you ask an oil executive or an energy executive, I suspect the answer might be, we're able to do this, we've done a lot of testing, and there hasn't been any animals harmed, the environment has been safe, and we've been able to do it in a responsible way. What's wrong with that statement, if there's something wrong with it?
We've never been able to drill and transport oil in a safe fashion. There have always been spills, sometimes disastrously huge spills. And if we had a spill in the Arctic, it would be double disaster.
But I gotta be honest, I have a problem with sort of an extreme view of never or always, because there has to be a middle ground where the environmentalists are protecting their assets and the oil companies are getting to do the business that they need to do as well. Is there a middle ground we can reach?
I think the middle ground is on the solutions. I think the facts speak for themselves. I was speaking about the dangers of these activities. If the society wants to go forward because it's so worth the money or so worth the resources, that's a different question, but it's a massive risk to do so. And I think that the cost benefit, the way we calculate that, is it good for the people that are going to be impacted? In this case, I think the answer is no. You've got an American company wanting to process and ship oil that could be processed in the United States to Canada. Meanwhile, the United States is talking about whether to import tar sands from Canada. We've got all this trade going back and forth that makes no climate sense and no economic sense half the time.
Well, yeah, it's such a frustrating topic because we've been talking about this for probably more than a decade now, about the climate, the impact that us humans are having on the entire world. And it seems to me that, you know, Al Gore talked about this a lot early on, and that conversation's kind of faded over the years. Where are we now with the environment? Have we made progress?
Well, I think on the issue of climate change, we've taken some baby steps. I think the fact that President Obama is now actively talking about climate change is a good thing. I think Prime Minister Harper is taking steps backward. I think the Canadian government is not being a good global citizen on climate change, and I think that their obsession with drilling and exporting is indicative of that.
I mean, that's one of the byproducts of global growth, whether it's demand from Asia or demand from Europe or the US. We require this growth. The growth requires energy. The energy usually involves some sort of digging or drilling of some sort. I don't know where the balance is on that, and I'm wondering if you can help us explain, where do we go from here? Because the world can't stop growing. If this is what's necessary for the global community to grow, what do they do?
I think the projects have to be homegrown and homespun. I think the fact that you have a Denver corporation drilling for oil in North Dakota, then taking this oil thousands and thousands of miles to Manitoba, and then exporting it again to Europe, or processing it in Canada, is a wrong economic model. It's disastrous for polar bears. We've already established that. I just think that these things have to take into account local citizens and local economies, because this is a boom and bust type of culture. It may feel good and sound good for a year or so. Once the oil companies leave, and this has happened to Churchill, it's left with the remnants, the dirty remnants.
Usually the negotiations go with the government, with the oil companies, and they'll bat it out with the rules and who's going to enforce it and how they're going to enforce it. But the citizens of those communities, they usually don't have a very big voice. Who stands up for them?
It's a good question in Canada. I think it's an unanswered question. I think it's why this proposal to ship from Churchill is a bad idea. That port is already capable of shipping many things and should continue to do so. No one's disagreeing with that. But to massively increase that port's capacity, which it doesn't have right now, to export a fossil fuel that's harming the very resource that is keeping that community alive, it just seems to me is not a good idea.
Bill Snape, thank you very much for your insight. Thank you.